What's good, YouTube, man? We back with another Monster Kody book reading, man. Chapter 3, The War. In the fall of 1980, the war between the 8 trades and the Whirling 60 was in the full swing. 5 casualties had occurred on our side, and 8 had fallen on their side. Even though people die every day in South Central, and by most any means, it was the timing and viciousness of these killings that made the gang community stop and take notice. Escalation was the order of the day. Entire streets were turned into armed camps to be used liberated territory where safe meetings and mounting up could be carried out with not so much as a worry about enemy gunfire. Meeting means a gang gathering to choose a rioting party or groups of shooters to invade an enemy territory. Mounting up means starting out on a mission. The particular war is the utmost importance. It was this very conflict that changed the politics of gang relations in South Central, a significant factor in the development of the critical climate that prevails throughout the region today. Once the 8 trades had really fallen out on our intent on Rolling Titsie's destruction was obvious, the entire Crip community split and began to choose sides, one set or another. We became, in fact, superpowers, not unlike the Soviet Union and the United States. Sets to whom we had small skirmishes with, who favored the sets who we had small skirmishes with, and who favored the 60s sided with them over us, and that also included their natural allies, other neighborhood sets. Neighborhood in Hood is their name of loosely knit group of sets throughout Los Angeles, including Linwood, West Covina, and Compton. The neighborhood Crips as a whole make up a larger part of the Crip community, quite possibly comparable to the expansive republic spread throughout the Union of Soviet Socialist Republicans. They're like social republicans, but not necessarily united, as each of a different culture with a diversity of customs and philosophical beliefs. This nigga ain't write this. The neighborhoods had only even been loosely associated. However, with the brutal escalation of the war, they became a united front against us and our allies. Sets began to predict the winners, a virtually impossible deed, as our war, like most gang wars, was not fought for territory or specific goal other than the destruction of individuals of human beings. The ideal was to drop enough bodies, cause enough terror and suffering so that they'll come to their senses and realize that we were in the wrong set to fuck with. I guess that's what all gangs do, basically. Their goal, I'm sure, was the same. Points were scored with individuals with prestige were hit. The aggression displayed in 1980 was unprecedented. We, as a set, the simple, what the fuck does that mean? Level in violence that still causes some to cringe today. What most folks call miserable fail to realize is that our wars are no less complicated than wars. Our wars fought to either suppress or liberate a country. The difference is not legality but cause. Some causes are righteous and other in accord with human nature, while others are reactionary and repressive. Gang wars fall somewhere in between. I can quite easily justify the retaliation on enemies for killing one of my comrades, but simultaneously, I will condemn the murdering of a non-combatant. Retribution is a natural reaction. It's easy to persuade the general public of your righteousness when you control major media, but those of us who control nothing are in a precarious position of having someone guess what our position is. That leaves a large gap for misinformation. Who fired the first shot? Who knows? But to who? Who cares? Which one of theirs is lying? Which one of theirs is lying in a pool of blood with their brains blown out? The question becomes weightless in the aftermath of a shooting where someone has died. Thus, the goal will become elimination of the shooter or as many of his comrades as possible. The inevitable leads to a war, a full-scale mobilization of as many troops as needed to achieve the desired effect. Funerals. Damn, this nigga deep. It was in this season that I was captured for murder. This particular incident began in my hood. I had taken my little brother 10-speed out this day, and I was only venturing around the block to Shadow's house. Time seemed to fly by, and before I knew it, night had fallen, and I was left in a dangerous position on having to get back home. This task most trying, as our hood was now being clocked by not just the 60s but their allies and our new enemies. Night was killing time. Yeah, I know, G. Dreading my upcoming journey and cursing myself for not having brought a strap, I mounted the bike and started out. Pedaling it fast toward the dark side street of Hollandale, I noticed 4 occupants in what appeared to be a blue T-Bird. They were parked on the left hand of the street facing me. I slowed to a precautionary coast and strained my eyes to survey the situation. I was riding into it. Upon further observation, I realized the T-Bird belonged to my homeboy, Sleepy. This meant the others had to be homies as well. As I sighed of relief fell over me, and I picked up my pace again. But then I noticed a hand gesture coming from Sleepy's car. Thinking they were joking with me and clowning, I flipped them off as I approached the front of the car. Unbeknownst to me, they were trying to warn me of an imminent danger, for they had seen a carload of shooters bend the corner with their lights off moments after I rolled out the shadow's driveway into the street. They sat motionless and waited for me to get cut down. Damn. I never saw the car until they were parallel with me, and I was staring down the barrels of 5 weapons under the unfriendly faces of my enemies. Fortunately, they wanted to see who they were killing. They wanted some points, and they gave me an edge. Look, look, exclaimed the overexcited voice from within the car. It's Monster Kody. Shoot that nigga, shoot him. Another faceless voice shouted. Too late. By now I had reached the front of Sleepy's car and was diving behind it in an attempt for survival. Before I hit the ground, the shooting began. Sitting parallel with Sleepy's car, they proceeded to riddle the car with bullets. I lay in the dirt and hoped that they wouldn't have the heart to exit the car and see if I would hit or dead. It seemed like 5 minutes before the shooting stopped. I knew for sure the homies inside the car were dead. I waited until I heard the shooter's car screech away before I began to move or even think about coming from behind Sleepy's car. This had been a close call. Death, it seemed, was stalking me. My brushes with it were becoming more and more frequent, increasing more serious. Had they used the shoot first, ask who later policy, I would have been killed. From the sound of their weapons, they had some heavy calibers. I distinctly remember seeing an M1 carbine, some big handguns, and I later found out the identity of the shooters as well. Getting up slowly so as not to be tricked into a screeching tire trick where a soldier would be waiting with the weapon. When I emerged, I began to... Damn, they got tricks like that? Niggas, shit. These some tricky killers up there. I'm scared of LA. Nah. I began to hear Huss rustling in the car and was awestruck to find everyone who was still alive. Sleepy was sitting in the driver's seat. Next to him, Big Lynn, who stood 6 feet 3 inches and weighed a hefty 340. Damn. Her arms measured 22 inches around. We often used her as a disciplinary board for unruly homegirls and, to be frankly, some homeboys. Behind Big Lynn was Gangsta Brown, and to the left of he sat his younger brother, Fatty. They had been sitting there for some time, slipping back, smoking PCP when they saw me dive from behind the car. They slid down their seats. Miraculously, no one was killed, though they all had suffered buckshot strafings and glass cuts from the shattering windows. Yeah, they pulled themselves from the wreckage, and that's exactly what it was. It was amazing how in a matter of seconds, a car at such expense can be reduced to a hunk of switched metal, absolutely useless. Standing there in the street surveying the damage, Sleepy could not believe what he saw. We counted like 28 bullet holes in the body of the car, not including the buttshot dents. Fatty had been taking a large caliber shot right through the bib of his hat. Everyone was bleeding on the arms and neck. Areas not covered by clothes were bloody. What held them from not falling from shock was the PCP. Even after the shooting, they were not totally in control of their faculties. I was not on PCB and was visually shaking. I had no sedative, and by now my nerves were all but shot. Combat was starting to take its toll on me. It seemed as though I was viewing a body every other month, having brains and blood splattered all over me. What the fuck? Death, or the fear of death, became my constant companion. But still, my dedication, my patriotism was strong. The can't stop, won't stop mentality had taken over my being. Trying to stir Sleepy into a retaliation mood proved fruitless. He and the others were too intoxicated to mount a serious defense and seemed unconcerned about anything but their wounds and Sleepy's car. This goes back to what I had already explained about military personnel and combat soldiers. Although all victims in this case were in the military, none of them were actually combat soldiers. When struck, they had no immediate inclination to strike back. Often they relied on the assault of the combat division, and the counter attack would be then carried out. Combat troops, on the other hand, would have assembled in mountain and been en route to the designated spot before the smell of coordinate cleared the air. Rapid deployment brought instant recognition to those involved as a serious group of cats bent up upholding their prestige. Distinguished at their lack of concern, I mounted the bike and continued my journey home. When I turned onto my block, I had gone about 4 houses. A purple duster speed had sped towards me and fired one shot. Fired one shot? This nigga got shot at 2 times in one night? God damn, 1980 in LA? Either the driver or the shooter, or perhaps both, were inexperienced in the technique of doing the drive-by, because I didn't even feel the closeness of the bullet. My forward motion and their speed in the opposite direction had obviously thrown the shooter's aim off. He probably aimed directly at me, a moving target, causing his shot to go somewhere behind me, no doubt into one of the houses I was passing. The car kept straight, but picked up speed before thinking they had actually done something. My pace had been momentarily broken, but I never dismounted my bike. When I got to my house, my sister was standing out front. Though she had heard the shot, she had not known what had happened. Surprisingly, she was not accosted and asked to identify herself. Had the shooters found out that she was my sister, she would have been shot and kidnapped. Though our war had not reached that level of kidnapping and executing family members, it was being talked about as an inevitable consequence of our headlong escalation. They on some other shit. This too pointed up the inexperience of these shooters. If they were on 69th Street, that meant they knew where I lived. I lived there, and their intentions were to try to catch me or one of my homies coming from or going to my house. My combat mentality was still at its peak from the brush with death around the corner. So when I got to where my sister was standing, I yelled at her to take her ass in the house, and that she didn't know a goddamn war was going on. She had stared at me moment and then ran inside. Putting up Little Monster's bike, I had 1,000 thoughts running through my head. Once in my room, I sat down in my bed and devised a plan. In the midst of this latest attack, usually we responded right away, but tonight there seemed to be a lull in communication. The drums weren't beating. I phoned Sidewinder in an attempt to consolidate a riding party of able shooters and was shocked at what I heard. The very same car that shot up Sleepy's car had also rolled down Sidewinders and some others homies up on 80th Hood, and their initial attack had taken place on 71st Street. But this wasn't the shocker, for it was common for one car to make a full sweep of an entire neighborhood. The surprising news was that in the attempt to shoot one of our homies, they had shot and critically wounded a member of the Inglewood family's Bloods, who had been creeping into our hood to shoot Sidewinder and the homies. So basically, they ops pulled up in the hood and shot they other ops. That's crazy as fuck. The shooter car met in the righteous resistance in the 80s and didn't get a chance to do any damage, although shots were exchanged. When asked what they did with the blood, Sidewinder responded. When asked what they did with the blood, Sidewinder responded, "We sent them to his maker." So damn, after the Sidewinder, after the motherfucking blood got shot, cause they were lurking through their hood trying to get Sidewinder them and getting shot by the 60s. Fool laid there dying and Sidewinder walked up on them. Yeah, boom. Okay, I get it now. Now I was depressed. It seemed then, bro, come on, bro. Y'all caught a body today. Now I was depressed. It seemed then that We were in totally occupied territory. Hanging up the phone, I lay back in the bed and looked over at the empty bed beside me. My little brother, little monster, had been captured for armed robbery along with Lil Harv and a woman named Speedy, a close associate of the hood and a firm supporter of the criminal class. He had been given 6 months at camp. I wish he were here because he'll be down to launch an attack from right here. But bro was not here. Was not there. And Crazy D was still in the hall. Shit, I felt trapped. I had to do something. Bro, somebody died today. You know what I'm saying? I guess you got shot at twice. You gotta get back. I feel you. I retrieved my double barrel from a redeemed dresser and checked it for ammunition. Then I went out and got back on bro's bike, holding the shotgun, which had been installed off for stealthy. Across the handlebars, I pedaled west towards the borderline that separated our hoods from the 60s. Wearing my combat black, I crossed Western's Avenue and entered their hood on the left flank in what today we call the first parallel. I made my way cautiously up 69th Street to Horace Mann Junior High School. Rumor had it that they had been using Horace Mann as a meeting place, for they had still failed to procure a part for their meeting in Mountain Place. I circumvented the school on the left side, which was on 71st. Then I parked my bike and traveled on foot. I had hopped in the school fence and had the shotgun in my waistband, landing on the side with a thud. When I got to the lunch area, I was disappointed to find no one there. Disappointed. It's crazy. Had they been there at the school this is where they would be found, because the lunch area was covered with a roof. Moving now on instinct, I continued through the lunch area on out the makeshift bungalows, which had been constructed to allow the school to continue while an administration building was being renovated. I began to hear music in the distance. The closer I came to the north side of the school, the louder the music got. Finally, I said to myself, someone to shoot. Creeping slowly towards the area, I believe the music and now loud talking was coming from. I kept a vigilant eye from sentries and stragglers who might announce my presence and blow my surprise. And of course, that was a very real possibility that existed, that if I did not strike swiftly, causing much damage and confusion, they could mount a response and trap me in the school. And I had only 2 shells, both 0-0. At each corner, I crouched and peeked from the low position, combat training I had learned from old war movies. But as I negotiated each corner, I should say negotiated, y'all. Each corner, I found no one there. Where were they? That a terrifying thought occurred to me. The roof. These motherfuckers was on the roof. This gave them a vantage point far superior to my ground level position. But the sound disproved my theory. It was an even level sound, it was an even level sound, and not, as I had surmised, an above level sound. My second thought was confirmed as I made my way around the next set of bungalows. They were not even in the schoolyard, but outside its gates, parked on 68th Street, talking as they played the car radio. Beer bottles on the hood and roof of the car. Luckily for me, they were on my side of the street. For they had been on the other side, I would not have been able to maximize my damage. Not only did I have to shoot through a fence, but my targets were in the street. This put about 17 feet between us. I had 0-0 buckshot, which could compensate for my distance, but my weapon was sawed off. This meant that my shot would be more sprayed than a solid impact. Realizing that my transportation was clear across the school, I debated whether I should extend one or both barrels. Expend one or use the one to secure my escape, or pull both triggers at once, using the tremendous sound as the diversionary tactic and hoping to realize my intent, which was a funeral or two. Making my decision, I stepped to the gate, stuck the barrels through, and shouted, "Gangster!" Boom, boom. I let loose one and then the other in rapid succession, and then turned and ran back through the bungalows in the lunch area and finally reached the fence on 71st, stopping to put the shotgun in my waistband. I saw a car bend the corner and I held the shotgun out instead I held the shotgun out instead and ducked behind the trash bin and let the car pass. It was occupied by two older civilians. When I got back up and shoved the gun in my waistband, I jumped. The barrels were still hot and burned my privates. Holding my gun in my hands, I scaled the fence. I ran back where I found when I had left the bike, and goddamn, someone had stolen it. Now I had began to panic because Western Avenue, the first parallel, was 1 block away. Surely I thought the survivors would be in the vehicle looking for their assailants, and they'd be armed. Besides, I had no shells. I turned on my heels and trotted back to 71st, trying to stay as close as possible to the lawns in case I had to run through a yard. Once I got to the first parallel, I felt better, but no safer. The barrels had cooled down enough now that I could put the gun in my waistband, so I hid the weapon. Finally, I made my way down our driveway into the house. I reloaded the shotgun and laid against the stereo speaker, and then I turned on the TV and watched Benny Hill show. I felt much better. That's crazy. This nigga wild as hell. So this nigga got shot at 2 times. Hey, how many bodies he caught this? He caught I think he killed one of those niggas because he was charged with murder. The whole story started when he was charged with murder. So the nigga caught at least 1 body. And he got shot at twice. And blood died. It's a crazy ass book, y'all. I'm gonna come in with another episode, man, later, man. Y'all like, subscribe. Peace.